we have really great relationships now on the Joint Staff with the interagency.
This hearing reveals what may have been overlooked in the Iran conflict.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Despite his campaign promise of no new wars, President Trump has been obsessed with using the military any chance he gets, from deploying troops to American cities, to propping up Maduro's chosen number 2 in Venezuela, to an endless war of boat strikes in the Caribbean Sea, and now in an illegal war with Iran, where hundreds of thousands of our troops are in harm's way every day with no exit strategy in sight. This administration hides bad policy behind the exceptional military operations and the valor of our uniformed personnel. I've long said Iran is a malign actor, but a responsible administration would have managed this short of conflict instead of starting a war of choice. There was no imminent threat to the United States or our troops. The military was not the most effective tool to get Iran to capitulate, as we're already seeing too clearly now. And using force has made Americans in the Middle East less safe while spiking costs for Americans here at home, all to the tune of 14 service members dead, hundreds wounded, billions of taxpayer dollars, and untold costs to our military readiness. This administration claims to be focused on the warfighter, but President Trump told us when he announced a war from his luxury resort that he expected service members to die. Now, sadly, it's clear how unserious Trump is about his role as the commander-in-chief. His war within Iran has already reminded us how important it is to prevent a war, how serious it is to ask the military to wage one under poor strategic direction, how destructive a wide-ranging war can be for Americans, for our service members, and how difficult it is to actually end one once you start it. The incompetence and casual disregard for our service members' professionalism and sacrifice is, in my opinion, a scandal. General Kane, can you tell us the status of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps' Navy, the entity actively closing the strait?
Senator, apologies, I was listening to you. I was just trying to write it down.
No worries.
They're mostly destroyed. CENTCOM continues to watch them.
Not the Iranian Navy.
No,
the IRCG.
Yes, ma'am. The smaller, I won't get into any classified materials, but the smaller, fast, and smaller boats, Boston whaler-sized boats. There's still some out there. Yes, ma'am.
So this administration and the Secretary of Defense has been boasting about sinking the ships of the Iranian Navy, but let's call this what it is. It's misdirection. They want us to focus on the impressive number of large Iranian ships underwater to distract from the fact that they had no plans for the second Navy that Iran owns that has always been a hard problem to address by military force. The IRCG Navy, not the Iranian Navy, has been Iran's tip of the spear at the Straits of Hormuz, seizing vessels and threatening to target U.S. assets. Iran has long invested in this second asymmetrical Navy specifically to develop capabilities that would be difficult for conventional U.S. military forces to target. Iran's advantage was well known to anyone paying attention. I have no doubt that competent planners in the Pentagon raised their concerns about a quagmire in the strait to leadership. The question is why their leadership did not pay attention to this sound advice. Hubris is not strategy, and in war it costs lives. Even if the strait reopens, this administration has created a new, less safe world by initiating and then bungling this crisis and teaching Iran that it can charge $1 million a ship to transit the strait. It will take a long time for the global economy to bounce back to normal trade flows, and Iran has learned, again, that they can charge $1 million per ship, creating a new funding line for their malicious activity against Americans for years to come. And in the Indo-Pacific, I don't doubt that if the worst day comes, our military will step up to challenge and defend Americans and our interests with military force. But will they be asked to lay down their lives unnecessarily just because the White House was unready and incapable of preventing a crisis boiling over into a war in the Indo-Pacific? General Kane, do you agree that the military would benefit from significant intra-agency planning by the Department of Defense on actions short of war that can be taken if a crisis occurs?
Ma'am, I appreciate that question, you highlighting the importance of that. And we have really great relationships now on the Joint Staff with the interagency. I think our relationship in particular, I'll just pick CIA, I think it's the best it's ever been. We're really working hard to find the best of Title 10 capabilities plus the best of Title 50 to ensure that we deliver really entrepreneurial options for our national policymakers to do what you're talking about, Senator.
All right, but I am concerned because during the recent NDS hearing, I laid out the very real ways that a crisis in just one of the dozens of flashpoints in the Indo-Pacific could be devastating for our service members, Americans, and our American economy. But since then, this administration has only further diminished DOD's ability to prepare for these crises. In fact, as many as 1/3 of the assets in the Middle East are originally meant to be in the Indo-Pacific. This war of choice is draining our military resources. We need leaders who do everything they can to ensure warfighters only fight when they have to, not because of one man's whims and a lack of bravery among the yes men he surrounds himself with. I thank you for your service, General, and I continue to look forward to working with you.
Thank you. When she talks about misdirection, she's raising a broader issue that often comes up in national security discussions. Governments sometimes emphasize visible wins because they are easier to communicate and politically advantageous. But modern conflicts, especially involving countries like Iran, are rarely that straightforward. Iran has deliberately developed asymmetric capabilities, such as smaller, faster naval units through the IRGC Navy, precisely because they are harder for a conventional navy.
Military, to counter. This isn't new information in defense circles. It's been studied and debated for years. But what Duckworth is questioning is whether that knowledge was fully integrated into decision-making at the highest levels. Another key point she's making is about the cost of conflict, beyond just the battlefield. When military action is taken without a clearly defined long-term strategy, the consequences tend to ripple outward. That includes economic instability, risks to global trade routes like the Strait of Hormuz, and long-term geopolitical shifts. Even if a specific objective is achieved, the aftermath can create new challenges that are more complex than the original problem. That's why she emphasizes the idea of a war of choice versus a necessary conflict, because the threshold for using military force has long-term implications not just for soldiers, but for civilians, economies, and global stability.
Her exchange with the general also highlights something important: the difference between tactical execution and strategic planning. The military can carry out orders effectively, but the broader strategy, deciding when and why to engage, is shaped by civilian leadership. When she asks about interagency planning, she's pointing to the need for coordination across institutions like the Department of Defense, intelligence agencies, and diplomatic channels. In modern conflicts, success often depends on how well these different parts of government work together before a crisis escalates, not just how they respond once it does.